Hello my brothers and sisters of the Order, welcome back to the Order. I am Celtic Templar, and yes, welcome back to another Fantasy Friday video, and we're talking about the Minotaur. Now, the Minotaur is probably one of the most biggest, dungeon creatures in Dungeons & Dragons, or in mythology especially, and many parts of Narnia and such. And I want to talk about the major forms I have to understand, which we all have to actually understand, on how the Minotaurs would have really probably looked. And the major thing is, we have to also understand that, well, Minotaurs are stupid, yes. However, I also need to explain to y'all, I've seen Shad from Shadiversity's, videos on the Minotaur, especially pretty much both, or all three of them, and I had to call him out on some things that he might have gotten wrong, due to the fact a Minotaur is kind of the most dumbest creature actually in any part of mythology, especially due to the fact they're stated to have all brawn, no brains, meaning they're mainly a charging type creature that will charge and kill and maim, which is kind of how the Minotaur in Greek mythology technically mostly dies, so yeah. But now, I want to explain to y'all, I kind of do agree with some of Shad's ideas, but there's another thing I also had to explain to y'all that, in fact, Shad from Shadiversity stated that they could probably use archery. I don't actually see that probably working out for a type of creature that has horns, for example, and as well to the fact that most of the time whenever I saw any of his videos, I didn't see any of the Minotaurs probably wearing any armor, and as well, some of the weapons I would not agree with. So, yeah, why don't we get into this and I can explain it very soon. Now, one major thing we have to understand is that Minotaurs are not exactly a creature of, well, brain power. They're just a charging type creature. And another thing is, we also know that they eat meat, especially from the ancient Greek mythology that actually talks about the Minotaur actually devouring humans. So, yeah, we're probably going to see some gruesome parts to that. But now, I want to put another thing out here, especially, whenever I think of a Minotaur, I'm normally thinking of this creature that of which looks like it's wearing, hardly any armor. And the thing is, that might be true, but also might not be true. Which, reason being, we gotta understand that this is mainly our modern mythology on a said creature, but it's not exactly, mostly true. Now, first we will get into the armor, then we'll get into the shields and swords, or weapons. No, I said swords, yes, but that might actually not be correct. Now, first, let's actually go into the type of armor. What exactly would the armor be? Well, for one, before any of you start saying that it would be any type of armor, no. Due to the fact their horns kind of get in the way of helping them out. And second, well, we gotta understand, these guys are not the brightest bulbs in the box. These guys, they kind of won't be that smart enough to create their own armor due to the fact they're, a cow-like type of creature. And in fact, now before any of you start saying that cows are dumb, well, not exactly. But the thing is, I have to also put this out here, that even a cow can actually know something when something's wrong. So, even so the form is, that can actually be also the same with a Minotaur. And in fact is, a Minotaur is half human, half, bull. So, yeah, we gotta understand, it kind of does have some human knowledge, somewhat, but not as much. Now, another thing is also to the fact that whenever we actually understand the idealism of the Minotaur with armor, I don't see it making the armor, but I do see it probably taking armor from the said corpses it probably killed. That or something else. Now, one major form into this could be leather armor, or human skin armor that could be turned into leather. Yes, you can actually turn human skin into leather. In fact, it's actually been found out from many crime reports that many human beings that have been killed by some nutcases out there, especially from the historical Chainsaw Massacre, which I don't know how the hell that got referenced into Texas, but apparently the guy turned many forms of human skin into yeah, I don't want to go into that because it's kind of gruesome just to talk about already. But yeah, it apparently had turned him into tough leather, and of which was stated to be almost like cowhide. So, if we think about that, that actually can give us a good explanation. So, in truth, humans actually have been ritually killed or eaten by said humans, especially with their skin being pulled off. In fact, it's actually stated that the African tribe, some African tribes that were known to have been cannibals and such, were stated to peel the skin off humans and, well, just eat the meat underneath. So, that's kind of horrifying, but still, yeah. But that brings me to my next topic. What if, because technically, well, a Minotaur is not going to be that dumb, especially due to the fact he has some human intelligence, so we have to put to the fact he might actually take humans, that of which he had killed, and skin them and such, or if he take them prisoner and such, and probably skin them alive, and then boil their said skins into making a said armor. Now, in fact, if you think about it, he could probably keep adding on over and over again in order to make a impervious type armor. In fact, well, leather armor has actually been used by many cultures, in fact, and in such, it could easily be seen that throughout the Bronze Age in Europe and Asia and even Africa and especially the Americas, that even though because the only reason we got rid of leather armor was the fact that the evolution of weaponry. So we had to evolve our weapons. So, yeah, you can easily understand why he would probably make leather armor, especially for a Minotaur. So, yeah, they could easily just take any type of pelts or animal from any type of animal or such, or even their dead comrade, and probably turn it into a impervious type of armor, that of which with the hair in the inside and the outer pelt on the outside. So in other words, this game could be technically a, well, impressive type armor. Now, what about metal armor? This is a big one I have to put out here. One major armor I don't see being used, it would be scale. Scale armor is like a vest. In other words, it's like a shirt. So I don't see him wearing that, due to the fact of him having his horns protruding. So that part idea is out of the question. However, we can then go to actually something else. We can actually go to, well, mail armor. Now, even though mail especially, which, yes, mail is technically like a t-shirt, so I don't see him actually wearing mail armor from Europe, but I can actually see him wearing a type of design of mail armor, that of which is used in the parts of the Middle East and in parts of India. This type of armor has actually been known as Indian mail, in which, or Caliph mail. Another one I would rather prefer is Eastern mail, which was used pretty much by the points of Europe. However, India especially had actually used the design type of plate armored system to actually connect the said mail shirt. In other words, it would technically like, well, wearing an office suit, only metal, and as such, the only way you can connect it is with these metal plates. Now, as I state, the Minotaur is probably going to be too damn dumb to actually know how to make the armor, but he will know that it is a good armor, which we got to put that into play. However, I do have to put this out that a Minotaur is technically somewhere between 6 and 8 feet tall, so we got to understand that it might not fit him unless he's really, probably only smallest would probably be 6 feet. And I am 5'11", so that can actually explain a lot. And even with my mail armor, well, entirely, we had to fit this to the body. So you understand the point. Now, one major detail I have to put out here is the fact that the armor that of which the Minotaur would have to be wearing would have to be that Eastern design feel to it. In other words, he could easily just wear it and go into battle. However, I don't know if his arms might be covered or not, depending, because due to the fact a Minotaur is a big, beefy type creature, and he's going to be, well, he's going to have muscles and such that might even make Arnold Schwarzenegger feel ashamed. So, yeah. But however, I also do see another type of armor they could wear, especially the cuirass, especially of that of Bronze Age cultures, or like say maybe with the Spartan hoplite type cuirass, if we all know it. However, even the Greek cuirass, I somewhat also don't see them somewhat wearing, because the fact they have to take this from a dead body. So even that will have a real big problem. But it might be a little better than nothing. So easily he could just attach it, because if now you all know how cuirasses work, you have to attach it from the side, not place your head through like mail. So that could be great armor for him. So even with this type of armor, I could see that working. Now then, there is also the Linothorax. The Greek Linothorax, actually, if none of you understand, it was used in Greece at the same time as the Minotaur and such, and, well, since Greece and technically the Minotaur are technically part of the same somewhat culture, we have to understand that I could actually see this working for the Minotaur, especially. In fact, the Linothorax is the poor man's armor of the Greek world. And in fact, it has actually been used by multiple armies, especially, mainly by Alexander the Great, especially of how it became famous and world known, and as well also by the 300 Spartans. However, since those guys were mostly the main body military unit, so those 300 Spartans were more of like the, King's Royal Guard and such. So there's a huge difference. But the thing is, the common soldier would use the Greek Linothorax, which was easy to manufacture, which was just linen and glue. If you don't know what linen is, it would technically like this. It would be cloth, and it would just be glued on in many layers, and in which was known to stop arrows. So, guess what? If a Minotaur can get his hands on something like that, he could easily wear it, and which would be an impressive armor and a lot lighter. And I could probably see that working a little better for this guy, due to the fact, and a little cooler, because the Linothorax, I don't know why, it is always a more badass look than a cuirass. I don't know why. I like it a lot more than I do a cuirass armor plate, which is kind of hilarious, I know. But then there is also the laminar. Now, laminar is another good design, because some laminar contraptions are also just like of the Linothorax. They have a type of, well, structural type system, meaning you just place it over and attach it and you're ready to go. In fact, I wanted to explain to y'all that Linothorax and laminar somewhat did go together in history. In fact, it's stated that the Seleucid Empire had actually used a type of armor, that of which is a mixture of laminar and, well, Linothorax, meaning it was connected in a layered system. And however, only the most wealthiest of soldiers could actually afford this stuff. So, yeah. However, though, I could see a Minotaur probably using this armor. Now, as I state, the only armor that a Minotaur can get his hands on will pretty much be his lifesaver. But the thing is, he can't wear it like a shirt, meaning he's going to be pretty much bare shirt from the entire time. Unless he can get his hands on Eastern-style mail from India, or the Middle East, or the Linothorax, or the Greek-style plate armor, or any type of cuirass-type plate armor, as we know from history books, as well as making his own armor out of human skin, yikes, might actually happen, or as well, laminar. So, yeah, that kind of armor actually can make sense, and I do see that happening, but I hear you already. But Templar, what about the rest of his armor? Well, actually, there might never be. Because one major thing is, most of the time, his legs are just that of cow. So I don't see that working. But what about his arms, you might ask? Well, maybe. But the thing is, it depends. For one, I don't see him probably wearing something like this. This is articulated plate armor for the said human arm. And if you wear it, guess what? You gotta pretty much, well, wear a type of system in order for it to work. But the thing is, I don't see a Minotaur wearing something like this, due to the fact it's gonna probably restrict his arms, unless he could probably do a forge work on it, which some Minotaurs in history were known, or mythology I should say, were actually stated to probably be some blacksmiths. Or something like that, because this is just what I'm hearing from weird mythology from Greek, so it's kind of a little weird, I know. But now, one major thing I have to explain to y'all, plate armor for the arms might not exist for them. So that could be a major variety. But now, what about their shields and weaponry? Well, first let's go to the shields. One major thing I do see a said Minotaur probably using would not exactly be a Greek hoplite shield, but maybe a hoplite shield, especially if they're in a formation of other Minotaurs. However, as I stated, they are probably going to have to take this from their opponents, or they're going to have to be part of some great army and actually be given it, so it depends. But just imagine, for example, if you have that Hopalon shield, and it pretty much covers most of his body, except for his feet, but the thing is, he's going to want to do a frontal charge with this thing. And Hopalon shields have been known, especially in history, with this said type of design. However, the Hopalon shield is not the greatest type of shield for one-on-one fighting, especially for a Minotaur. So in other words, that Minotaur is probably going to be 1 on 10, especially due to the fact the only way I could probably see one killing a Minotaur is using a pike formation, especially. In other words, if none of you know what a pike formation is, a pike formation is incredibly useful to stop a charging creature. So, like, say, cavalry, for example, or in this case, the Minotaur, when he's charging at you, you're going to need to use a pike. See my point? So, yeah, Hopalon is out of the question. So what would be the perfect? That would actually have to be the tower shield. Now, tower shields have been used throughout cultures and such, and very much there are many varieties from them, from the Norman kite shield to the Roman scutum. So I can actually see a Minotaur technically using something like this, especially to the fact they can easily just charge forward and bash someone down and then kill them. Especially if they're in their home lair, actually protecting their younglings, or protecting their home, especially from an invader. So in doing so, they're going to charge out and hit you into a wall, and then probably stab you, or worse. So, yeah, that's kind of horrifying. Now, due to the fact we understand that this kite shield might work, or any scutum might work, this would be perfect for them to charge forward. Now, if none of y'all know that there are many type of tower shields in history, and if we take a look at the series Game of Thrones, especially with the Battle of the Bastards, we actually see this with a scutum-like shield formation just moving upwards every too often, and that's a tower shield. So any type of tower shield could probably work for these guys, especially if they're going to bash through enemy positions, and as well to protect their entire body. Now, that gives us a good explanation of what type of shield they would use. But now, what type of weapons would they use? Well, as I stated, I see in many type of images. However, in fact, they always use axes, which is not a bad idea, but even some of these axes look really stupid, and to the fact I don't see a Minotaur probably using these axes due to the fact they got to take it from a dead body. So, due to the fact of how these axes look, the only axe I can probably see them using, especially, would be a Dane axe, which they could probably use on them. However, they can use one-handed axes, especially, because those things are powerful enough. And as well, mixed in with a tower shield, it'd be perfect as a good hacking weapon. Yes, I can actually see that working. However, with Dane axes, they would not need a said, tower shield, because the fact is, to use a Dane axe especially, it does take a lot of force to technically stop and use the weapon. In fact, as none of y'all remember, with many of my forms of talking about Dane axes are incredible weapons, but they can only be used with 2 hands for full control and power, which that's a major thing of it. Now, as I also want to explain to y'all, the major thing also we have to understand, as I stated, with those axes, that those axes will have to be manufactured by humans. So they're going to have to be smaller and such, compared to that of what, well, Minotaur is known for. So what about other weapons? Well, Minotaurs are, as I stated, are too stupid to make their own weapons, but they are not dumb enough to use a weapon. So, what type of weapons would they probably manufacture or get their hands on in order to use? Well, in truth, as I stated, they would not use bows because of their horns. Now, Shad states this otherwise, that their horns will probably not get in the way. However, there are many bulls and cattle out there that have extended horns to the side, but also to the forward curve. Meaning, it's going to be near impossible to release the arrow, especially if you accidentally get it hooked in your own horn. Yeah, you see my point? It's just going to stop there. In fact, obviously, Shad doesn't grow up in Texas, because here in Texas we have longhorns, and longhorns have different design shapes of curvature in horns. There is also the Scottish longhorn, which I like to call them, but a lot of people just call them the Highland cattle. I call them Scottish longhorns because that's what they remind me of. But yeah, even they have type of different curvature in horn system, and many other type of bulls even have straight curved or just weird looping curves. It depends on the bull. So, yeah. And in fact, the cattle design of them are especially different. For example, there was the ancient Egyptian-style cows who have humongous horns, by the way, which I call these guys the Egyptian longhorns. So, yeah, you can see my point. But that's my major point I had to put out here. So, bows, no. However, crossbows, yes. Especially that of the fact, guess what? It doesn't take that much knowing on how to use a weapon, especially if you get your hands on it. In fact, this can easily be proven with many African tribes which this is a really dark part in Africa's history and world history, is when many African tribes enslaved a neighboring tribe to get European firearms. And many of them didn't know how to use the said firearms, but they then learned quickly on how to use them. Especially all to the fact that many Europeans, when they first got their hands on a firearm, they didn't know how to use it until they started to use it. So that can easily be explained, especially also with Native Americans. So we can understand. Now, a crossbow is a good example. So why? Kind of obvious. The crossbow is a gruesome weapon, and especially the windlass crossbow. None of y'all know what a windlass crossbow is. A windlass crossbow is this type of heavy-duty type of crossbow that of which you have to hand crank in order to actually pull up the said, well, pull the bolt all the way to the back. Problem is, it takes a long time. But for a Minotaur, I don't see it being that long. In fact, since they have extreme brute strength, they can pretty much just probably pull it back like nothing. So, just imagine what might happen if a, well, said group of Minotaurs get their hands on these crossbows and they're defending their home, and the front line is of the tower shield group, and guess what? There's going to be these guys in the back firing crossbow bolts at you and your company. You're technically just going to be killed. And I can also see that being used in military warfare with Minotaurs, like we see in Narnia, especially if they're hired. However, if it's a wild beast or whatever, yeah, you see my point. But due to the fact, if I could probably see a Minotaur using a crossbow, I would see him using a windlass-style crossbow, especially due to the fact it's a lot easier for him to just pull it back and fire. Now, there's also the Chinese repeating crossbow, but I don't think well, Minotaur is going to be that bright to know how the hell to use the thing. Due to the fact, these guys are kind of really stupid, as I said. However, yes, I know I'm kind of being a little hypocritical with my words, seeing as though I just stated that as soon as they get their hands on it, they know how to use it. Well, there's this thing called gravity, and the Chinese repeating crossbow is a submachine gun of the ancient world compared to the windlass, which is like a sniper rifle. So Minotaurs are not going to be that bright, but the thing is, a Minotaur is not going to know how to load the thing, seeing as though he's probably just going to be, well, bash some guy's head in with it. So, yeah. However, I could also see the Greek gastrophides, the Greek belly bow, probably being used by a said Minotaur. They would just push it down, or in worst case scenario, the fact is, these guys are going to be strong enough to just push it down with their arms rather than their belly. But the thing is, they'll probably just aim it with their bellies and fire. Yeah, that's probably just horrifying just to think about. So yeah, 2 crossbows I could probably see. The windlass and the Greek gastrophides. So that could actually probably work. Now, what about probably swords? Well, swords, this is going to be a hard one. Now, with the tower shield, I could probably see them using short stabbing swords, especially if they're defending their home. Now, why is this? Kind of obvious. For major example, if they're going to defend their home, they're going to want to defend it, not wanting to charge out like an idiot like they would in the major open fields. So, what they would probably do is hold a tower shield formation and just charge forward and probably start stabbing like with a gladius sword. So that could be a good design. So a short stabbing sword, especially like that with a Spartan short sword, which are used by the hoplites at the time, that could probably work. They could easily just stab and thrust, 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 and just keep pushing and thrusting and killing their opponent. And due to the fact, a Minotaur can easily probably just hold his position against a, well, an oncoming horde of hundreds of attackers in his home. Meaning, if he's in his maze-like system, guess what? He can easily use that maze system to attack his opponents. While he's holding his position, guess what? Even if he's holding his position, he's not going to hold them off forever. That's when 2 other Minotaurs could probably come to the side and attack the rear. This means that they could easily keep pushing forward. And pretty much you can only have enough space to probably push forward. Now, so, yeah, it depends on the weapon. Now, before any of you start saying that the Minotaur might not be able to use a swinging type weapon like an axe or anything in that area, but no. Dwarves, especially in Tolkien's work, are known to actually have this great mansions, these great halls which are incredibly huge. So that part we have to understand is a little different. So I do have to state to the following though. For defense, they would use a short sword and tower shield. But for offensive use, they would use something else entirely. They would actually probably use warhammers, maces, flails, and as well axes, yes. But for swords, this is a little bit of a different one. I don't see a greatsword probably being used, due to the fact these guys are really stupid. But I do see them probably using a messer, which is kind of, especially a gross messer, which could easily be bigger and better and incredibly more dangerous. Especially due to the fact he could use it just with one hand behind a tower shield, charge forward and just do hacking blows. Now, that could also be said with the cleaver, which is another gruesome weapon. In fact, there are 2-handed cleavers in medieval history, none of which were known to just hack and maim into human beings. So that's another example. Now, maces, however, maces are another design, a variation of weapon. Now, there are many styles of maces. In fact, this image I really do like. Look, we see a Minotaur holding a mace. That is actually what I do see them probably somewhat using in open field battle. Especially to the fact they're going to need a weapon to easily just destroy and maim. In fact, Minotaurs are a gruesome killing machine on the open battlefield, so they're going to need a type of weapon, especially if they're, well, technically attacking in a horde, or especially to the fact they're no longer in their maze-like fortification. So guess what? They're going to need a type of weapon that's going to be meant for, well, swinging use. So the mace would be perfect for this. Because, guess what? He's going to probably take out 2 to 3 guys this one swing. And as I stated, the only way you could probably kill a Minotaur, especially out in the open field or anywhere, is with pike formation. However, in a maze-like structure, that will be near impossible to use spears. So spears are out, but when you're going in, but they're not so bad when you're actually holding them off, especially out in the open field. So that could be a good example. But I think I'll have to make another video for that for next time, probably on how to kill a Minotaur. So, yeah. But another weapon I could probably also see a Minotaur probably using would also be the flail. There are two type of variations, the one-handed and two-handed flail. Now, the two-handed I can see a Minotaur somewhat using, due to the fact he can easily grab the said two-handed flail and just wreak havoc. Literally, he could probably just swing it one way and swing it another, just like mowing the lawn, for example, which I don't know if any of y'all have ever been that idiot kid or something like that. You would take a stick and just start swinging long grass or whatever. Well, here's the thing. I was one of those kids back then. I was technically one of those kids that just swung a big long stick at long grass and such, and I just saw on how it could easily be cut down, or in this case, bent down in the process because of the way of sweeping motion. So just imagine what might happen if a Minotaur gets a two-handed flail and just... especially if he goes for a forward charge, which I could see this happening. A Minotaur can just start swinging this as soon as he's charging. Just imagine how horrifying that is. Your men will want to run, and you are technically left to die. So there's a major point to that. Now, a one-handed flail can also be perfect, because one-handed flails were actually incredibly gruesome. So just imagine, behind the tower shield, one-handed flail inside, and you just smack dab downward, smack dab downward, or to the side, sweep underneath your legs. That is how gruesome this type of design can be. And that is still incredibly dangerous. Now, another weapon, as I stated, it could also be the Warhammer. Now, hammers entirely, I do actually see somewhat using by, or being used by, the Minotaur. Due to the fact, if a Minotaur is attacking a said village and a blacksmith is wanting to protect his home, guess what? A Minotaur probably stops the said sledgehammer from hitting him in the face, so then, next thing you know, he uses it on him. So, I can actually see a massive hammer-type weapon being used by Minotaurs, especially a two-handed variation can probably be used. However, if it's probably a one-handed, it could still be devastating behind a tower shield type of structure, meaning he could easily just come down and hack at people, and it's even more gruesome if he's a two-handed variety version. So, yeah, that's kind of horrifying. But, yeah. Now, I'm kind of surprised, though, in Narnia, for example, they did actually show, this image actually does show type of cleaving weapon, which these cleavers, or Khopesh type weapon, which this is actually what I would actually agree with also. Now, cleaving weapons are incredibly dangerous, and I can somewhat see a Minotaur actually using this for a bladed weapon. Now, there are some African-style weapons I would agree with, but not as much. So, yeah. But many times over, I would also agree to the fact that they could use a two-handed version, which there are two-handed variations, or versions out there, that of which were meant for good cutting. And as well, I could also see a Minotaur actually using a falcata, or kopis as it's known as, in Greek type tongue. And in fact, this has been known to be a dangerous weapon on the battlefield. It has been known to cleave into human bodies like nothing, especially if you're wearing armor. So, in other words, if this guy's going to wear armor, for example, and he's going to go up against me if I'm a Minotaur, I'm going to want to use a falcata, especially for a good killing blow. And with my kite shield, that'd be perfect. Now, it has been known that falcatas can also stab, especially with the Celt-Iberian infantry design variation, which I talked about in my Celtic warfare video, if anyone want to see it. But, yeah, I had to explain to y'all that there are many variations and versions out there that of which they could have actually used on this Minotaur. But the thing is, I don't see many Minotaurs in any shows or anything like that showing armor or any type of variety. However, there is also another weapon I had to also include in here before we're done, is also the Bardiche. The Bardiche is a type of Russian weapon, and this is technically axe on steroids. And this is a dangerous tool, in fact, and I can actually see, well, a Minotaur somewhat using it. It has a point, so it has a point tip on it, and as well a bladed design variation. However, some of them are just variation of blades, so yeah. And in fact, I can see a Minotaur probably just going at it with humans on this. And these are, and yes, these have been used in historical warfare, especially by Ivan the Terrible, and also all the way to Peter the Great. However, Peter the Great later stated of how useless the gun was and later got rid of it, so it's kind of disconcerting. However, we also have to understand that the fact is that this type of weapon can easily be used. So, what, now I hear many of you already, Templar, what would be the best armor sequence for this said Minotaur? What type of armor and equipment and such would you agree with that would be perfect for the Minotaur for an entire type army or something like that? Well, that's a tough one. It depends on who they kill for their armor. Now, I can somewhat see most of, say, an entire army of Minotaurs probably wearing the Lionel thorax or mail, especially the Indian-style mail, for that historical type of look. However, if you're going to be like a major general or whatever, or something like that, they might wear the cuirass type armor, or, well, the regular type. You could also put, if you want to be more fantasy, just give them that weird, orcish-looking leather armor. So, yeah. However, for weaponry, especially with a tower shield, for defense, I would use the combination of crossbows and include, especially the windlass style crossbow or the Gastrofides crossbow. And these, especially if you're going to defend the mouth of your home. But if you're going to be defending the very narrow corridors, it would be perfect to use a tower shield and a short sword, such as a falcata, or including a gladius-style sword for a good thrusting capability. Or as well, even messers or falchions could also be a good example, because entirely you're going to want to push forward and stab. So, in truth, they're not going to be dumb enough not to use a said, well, weapon. But for open combat, as I state, they're going to need to use two-handed weapons also. However, pikes, not so much, due to the fact their enemy is somewhat half their size, so, yeah, you can see of why I wouldn't include that. But in truth, they would want to use mostly weapons of cleaving design, or as well, melee design. So, what type of formations with, said, kite shields, as well as with flails, or maces, cleavers, warhammers, bardishes. Well, technically bardiche would be without the kite shield, but you see my point. And as well, one-handed axes. Maybe short swords, maybe. But, yeah, there would also be the idealism of them also using crossbows to protect their flanks. And there would also be something else. But anyways, guys, hopefully you like this. Like, you can comment down below. Let me know if any of y'all have any ideas. And if y'all actually want me to talk about it, let me know in the comments below if you want me to include it in the Fantasy Friday. Anyways, guys, also check out our Facebook and like and subscribe for more. Anyways, guys, it's been Templar. Have a happy Friday.